Well, I've got a question here from Jenny, which I have been asked by lots of other people over the course of my life. Do great artists need to be able to draw? Well, as I've said before, I've got one or two reservations about the use of the word great. You know, what's a great artist as opposed to a really good or a really interesting artist? So taking that aside, let's put it this way, do artists who are worth something, do they have to be able to draw? Let's take two examples of artists about whom I have set out to write books, Caravaggio and Vermeer. Neither of them, in theory, as far as we know, or in practice, did any drawing. There are no drawings by Caravaggio's hand that we know of, no drawings by Vermeer's hand that we know of, and no drawings or underdrawings beneath the surfaces of their canvases that we can see by means of X-ray. But on the other hand, does that mean that they didn't know how to draw? There's a wonderful quote from the notebooks of Eugène Delacroix, the great French romantic artist, slightly later than Géricault, one of my favourite painters, who wrote these wonderful notebooks. And he says simply, which I think absolutely nails it, painting is drawing and drawing is painting, because they are in a sense the same activity. I mean, if you're going to define a form, you could define it with a pencil or you can define it with a brush, but you still have to make that gesture that defines a form, and that is in effect a kind of drawing. Neither Caravaggio nor Vermeer want the, so to speak, the appearance of drawing in their work, because they don't find lines or the presence of lines, visible lines, helpful to them. Caravaggio for the reason that he wants to spotlight everything and make it look as if it's under the glare. You know, he didn't know the cinema, but he is inventing a kind of cinematic lighting which has no use for line. It's all light and shade, forms emerging out of darkness. And Vermeer, for his part, is practicing, I believe, a form of illusionism that's derived from a reading, whether he read it directly or not, or whether he encountered it through other artists that he knew. But it's an idea about how to create an illusion that was formulated originally by Leonardo da Vinci, who believed that there were no such things as lines in our optical vision, i.e. any line that you see, if you analyse it closely enough, you'll find that it actually breaks up on close inspection into a kind of granular fade from one form to another. There's no such thing as a line in the world. And I think, again, Vermeer is eschewing drawing for almost doctrinaire reasons, because he believes that illusion can only proceed convincingly if you suppress this idea of the line. You try to get rid of it from your mind, because he believes that our eyes don't actually see lines. So those are reasons not to draw, or to create works of art from which the idea of drawing has been excluded. But nonetheless, I still come back to Delacroix and say that actually both of those artists, but Caravaggio and Vermeer, did draw, in a sense, because when you paint, you're drawing. I suppose another aspect of the question would be to look at it, as so to speak, from a sort of Florentine perspective, because Giorgio Vasari was the great spokesman of the Florentine Renaissance sort of model for art, in which everything proceeds from drawing, because Vasari equates disegno, which is design, which is the Italian word for drawing. He associates it with design, which is also the Italian word for design, which is the idea behind what you're going to do. So he thought that drawing was the essential tool, that in a way nobody painted anything without first drawing it. But whether he necessarily meant that drawing it on a piece of paper, or whether he meant drawing it out in a design in your mind, that's a slightly different version of the same question. And in that sense, I think, again, whether an artist actually draws or not, to do things that are really good, they still have to design them, they have to think of them, they have to embody them in their mind. And that too is perhaps a more profound form of drawing than simply the act of putting a pencil on a piece of paper. And I think that, of all the artists that I've known, all kinds of surprising artists who you might think didn't know how to draw. Like, for example, you might think Damien Hirst, who uses a large number of studio assistants to make a lot of his sculptures and so on, you might think that, well, maybe he's never drawn or doesn't know how to draw. He's actually fantastic at drawing. Likewise, Michael Landy, I think, is a fantastic draftsman. Michael Landy is another, like, really great, for me, contemporary artist whose work is essentially conceptual, but he can draw very well. But that goes back, I think, really to that they're using drawing as a way of thinking and as a way of planning. And on the other hand, I can certainly perfectly well think of all kinds of fascinating and tremendous artists who have never felt the need to pick up a pencil and apply it to a piece of paper. So as far as I'm concerned, I would rather be humble as someone who writes about art and doesn't make it, or make it a bit, in certain ways, but let's not go into that. And I would rather be humble and say that I don't think there are any rules, and I think wonderful art can come in all kinds of ways, and there's no absolutely set pattern for it. The one thing I'd add to all that is that I don't think there's any harm in being able to draw, and it's a wonderful skill to have. So I would never, ever, ever discourage anybody from trying to encourage their children to draw and develop drawing as a skill, because, boy, it's a good one.